It's my honor and privilege to stay on this stage for a roundtable discussion about companies. In companies we trust. And that's actually a great title. It's probably an allusion to In God We Trust, that's printed on American dollar bills. So our companies are new gods. Companies have become huge with sales figures and profits that now match the budgets of cities or small nations, have become hugely powerful, a challenge to governments and the way we see their role in the world. And are they evil? Are they good? This is going to be the topic of our discussion. And I would like to welcome our four panelists. Christian de Boisredon, the founder of Sparknews. Gwenhaël de Boulay, who is Senior Partner and Managing Director at BCG. Anne-Laurence Roucher, Deputy CEO at Mirova. And Gilles Vermot Desroches, Sustainability Chief at Schneider Electric. Christian, let me start with you. You are the founder of Sparknews, and I've already congratulated you on what a great name that is. Tell me 2 or 3 associations we should have with Spark.
Association, what do you mean? Sorry.
With just word associations. You are sparking something, action.
Okay. Yeah, well, actually, the idea is spark action. Spark is also the light, shed light on solutions instead on focusing on problems which depress everyone. And and sparkling, don't know.
Sparkling, that's really good. Yeah, that's great. So, Christian, how did you get this idea that journalism, and we don't want to make this a conversation about journalism, it's much bigger than that, that journalism focuses on the catastrophes, on things that go wrong, and basically leaves it at that, leaves us maybe in our fears, our uncertainty, and so on. And you saw the way traditional journalism works, and what did you say to yourself?
Yeah, actually, it comes from a personal experience. When I was 14, my older brother was working in the slums, and he was looking for, in Chile, he was looking for an ideas that could be useful to the people of the slum, but a sustainable idea. And he was scratching his head, looking for something sustainable. And it was in the 80s, and he read an article about Muhammad Yunus, who invented microcredits, banking to the poor, which since won the Nobel Peace Prize, and he thought it was a brilliant idea. So he replicated it in Chile, and 30 years later, his project has enabled to create 100,000 jobs. So I was there when I was 18 as an intern in the slums. And one day I just realized that if the journalist never wrote this story, he wouldn't have inspired my brother and changed the life of 100,000 people. And it probably took him a few hours or maybe 1 or 2 days, and he changed the life of 100,000 people. And actually it was a great story. So he did his job of journalist, telling stories which are inspiring. And obviously it was not a naive story. He was also dealing with the issue of the loan sharks who are abusing of people who don't have access to money. So it's not naive stories. It's you deal with the problem and a solution that can inspire.
So you don't pretend that the problem doesn't exist like some magazines do, but you say it exists, and then you hope that you're looking for a solution. So that makes it solution-based journalism.
Yeah, and actually those solutions are not always easy to find. This is where we help, we source, we are 20 of us, we source with partners in almost 100 countries to source the best solutions and to connect them with the journalists, and we create collaborative journalism. So with media in 50 countries, so each one of them produce some content, and then they publish the story of all their peers. So which, with less efforts, you can reach 100 million, 300 million people.
Yes. And often these stories sell really well.
And yeah, sometimes they make the bestseller of the year. And also it attracts audiences and advertisers, because advertisers prefers to advertise next to solution-based content, still with the editorial independence, of course, instead of fake news or other things. And we have we know some advertisers who are starting to think, why not dedicating our advertising budget next to these contributing content and solution-based content, instead of inconsistent content about Donald Trump or some stars who are making some parties, which is not inspiring people to make a better world.
So it's going really well in journalism, but it also goes beyond. You also consult companies that have nothing to do with journalism. They want your opinions. What are they looking for from you?
Yeah, well, actually, from all this sourcing that we make, we source maybe 5,000 amazing projects, and we found out that it had a lot of value to connect them with the companies, to show them that there are different business models that work, that they can integrate, they can work with them, and as proof that we can create businesses which have a positive impact. One example in the business world, BNP Paribas, for example, they make loans to companies, and they have created an offer which is the positive incentive loan, where they lower the interest rates according to the sustainability of what they finance. So they incentivize the company to do better, and it's also for them, it's a business, so everything is happy. Or many other examples, like, for example, Reuters, still in the field of journalism, even if as a company, their business is to provide financial informations. And they realized that in India, the farmers don't have access to the market price of their crops, so they are cheated by the middlemen. And so they designed an offer by text message, providing the market price of their crops, so they can negotiate, and actually they reach 30 million people. It's a paying service, but 30 million people can raise their incomes by 20%, which is in average $4,000, which is a lot for them. And so it's a business which has a positive impact. So that's two examples, and there are many others. And by sharing those examples, we can inspire companies, especially the most reluctant, who say, okay, so you're saying it works, so maybe we can see what we could do within our company that could work.
Gwenhaël, at your job at BCG, you have unique insights because you see a lot of companies and in a lot of time zones, a lot of countries and different cultures. When did you begin thinking that maybe companies needed to change? Was there a moment?
I think it's a gradual thing, but I see a sort of click that has been done in the last couple of years. My personal conviction is that the states, obviously, and the public structure have a big role to play, because they can have new regulations, new laws, and so on. But the recent future, I think, proves that this is not enough, and this is not going, at the right speed, because the states people, they have other preoccupations about their own re-election, about their opponents, and so on. And that is part of the agenda, but that's not all of the agenda. So I'm convinced that the companies have a big role to play. And the good thing is actually that they have two strong interests of doing that. The first interest is that their clients are asking for that. So, if you don't behave that way, looking at impact in terms of environmental impact or social impact, your clients might actually disappear at some point. You see many examples of that right now in the fashion industry, in the consumer goods industry, but also in the B2B industry gradually. The other thing is that from their staff perspective, most of their staff are concerned by those issues, and especially the millennials that are coming, but also the older generation. You might be aware, I see a lot of young faces in the room, that there are more than 30,000 students that signed a statement that they would not work for a company that does not respect some environmental and societal goals. So, being able to attract those talents and be able to retain those talents is critical for those companies. So that's why it has become such a big piece of the agenda of those companies. And I see that as being part of the CEO and the ExCo discussion that we have those days, more than ever.
And you travel a lot, you talk to companies from various backgrounds, and you sometimes get the feeling in emerging economies that they look at us in the West and say, it's easy for you to say that we should be more environmentally friendly and everything. You polluted the planet when you had your industrial revolution and didn't ask anyone's permission. And here you are telling us what to do. We have an industrial revolution to run also. Do you get that?
Absolutely. I think that the sentiment that we're expressing is very heterogeneous across the planet. Lionel and I were on the West Coast in the US these days. And I think this sentiment is climbing as well. I was in Asia a couple of weeks ago, and I think the sentiment is indeed, in the same direction that you're quoting, which is we need to develop first, and then the rest might follow. So development might need some environmental projects, such as, renewable energy and so on. But at the same time, they feel that we can be, a bit apocryphal about the fact that, polluting the planet and so on, as you said. The discussion that we're having with those companies is actually that they are global companies. So their clients are global clients. So they need actually to cope with this sentiment that they have to behave in the right way. Not necessarily for their local clients, maybe not as much as their European or their US client, but that this has become a global topic. And for global companies, it's essential that they tackle that issue.
So as they become global, the same rules apply as to everyone else. Anne-Laurence, you are a woman of finance. You deal with money, larger sums of money than most of us here can imagine. But it's not just that. How did you start out your working life?
So yes, I started my working life trying with the wish to combine a social purpose with business. I was actually just graduating from a business school, and I was hoping I could combine the two. So I started in a social enterprise in the catering industry, and that company was a 70 people company with 2/3 of its employees being people having massive problems with drugs, with alcohol, coming out of jail, and the company, we were hiring them to train them and as cooking persons, as waiter in the catering business. And so I was chief of staff of the CEO of this very little company. And I thought it's great, we can really make a difference. But my part is in the business, so let's get educated in the business, and then I'll come back to combine those two. And so I started in the consulting business, then I went into the finance business. And then in this business, I saw sustainable investing business, which is actually, in the finance world, there is a part of this world that is managing other people's money, our clients' money. So in my company, Mirova, we manage $10 billion. It's big money, but in the finance world, it's not that big money. And the purpose of our company is to invest 100% of these assets, of this money that the clients give us to manage on their behalf, sustainably. And I think it's very interesting as an idea because finance can make a difference by financing a better world. And financing a better world can be done in a lot of ways, which can actually combine financial performance and impact. And I think this is where it's hugely interesting. As Gwenhaël said, a lot of companies now have very strong rationale to behave and work more sustainably. First, from a pure profit perspective, there are a lot of businesses that will grow faster if they are sustainable. One simple example is in the energy and energy efficiency space. It can be more profitable in some areas, in some sunny areas, to have renewable energy based on solar energy than traditional fossil fuel boosted power. So it makes sense from a pure financial perspective. Same in the energy efficiency space. You will like the LED lighting because it helps you save energy. So there is a rationale to go into the LED business. So that's the opportunity side for companies. And then they avoid risk also if they behave sustainably with their workforce. If they manage their workforce more sustainably, they will have less issues. They will also potentially avoid black swans. So there is a strong rationale for companies to invest. And as an investor, we can generate profit alongside impact.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to come looking for you, all of you, on that particular topic, because maybe it's that good, maybe it's too good to be true in some cases, so don't answer yet. So basically your idea from your personal trajectory is that you could have stayed simply in doing in social issues company or something, but you went into the money world. So are we to understand that unless we have the money, the energy to do things, it's actually really hard to?
To transform the world,
yes,
we need people and we need resources to do that. And resources is also money.
Of course.
And just to answer quickly to your remark, I think, of course, it's not always that obvious that you can combine impact and financial performance.
We will get to that and make it controversial.
It's a very interesting topic, but for mature businesses, we can definitely do it. So I'll elaborate later on this.
Okay. Gilles. You are in charge of sustainability at Schneider Electric. How long have you been there?
20 years.
20 years. And you were always in charge of sustainability there. So you're the most sustainable element of that company.
The holder.
Was Schneider's often seen as a poster child for what a company can do. I think it's a Fortune 500 company. It's also regularly or several times voted as the most admirable company in the world, one of the most. So from where you're sitting, and I think you probably can have enough distance to answer this honestly, what makes Schneider so special, admirable?
Thank you. You are very lucky because you have certainly 5 dreamers on floor.
I rarely get accused of that, really.
Who explains that we are in a total new world where it's very interesting to invest to prepare the future, to take care to sustainability, because it's key, because all the newcomers in our companies are very involved in this matter. All the clients ask companies to be very active on this matter. It's true for, and it's not a weak signal today. And after 20 years, I can see that never we were in the same position as today. Perhaps we are in a tipping point, very interesting, where to explain that for me, and I will answer to your question, it's the same question for companies that for myself and certainly for yourself. It's a question of choice each time. Each of us, we have to change the world, and we have the responsibility of that, not the others. And because I'm in charge of sustainability in Schneider Electric very often, and my CEO agrees with that, even if sometimes it's difficult. My job is to open the window of the company, and very often I think my first company, it's to take care to sustainability, not to take care to Schneider Electric and the reputation of Schneider Electric. My job is to express that it's a very long journey where we have to change a lot of things. Never during these 20 years, I was considering that sustainability, it's a conciliation between social or profit, people, profit, planet. It's not a conciliation, it's a war. each morning it's a war. Because it's a question of money, it's a question of which type of investment, which type of risk, which type of understanding of the future. And each day we have to decide to consider that we prefer to be profitable tomorrow if we invest to innovate in sustainability, or to continue to have some other solution or manner to produce, because that is that was very powerful and key in the past. In fact, I have the chance, before to speak about Schneider, to have two convictions. The first is, when we are speaking about sustainability today, we are speaking about the shortage of many things, especially all the raw materials for the next 10, 20, and 30 years, and about certain, perhaps the collapse or the big difficulties about the climate change, biodiversity. In my view, is not true, because we have two new resources which are in growth. And it's key for the future. The first, it's the youth. Never we had 1 billion teenagers on the planet. And today we have 1 billion teenagers. When we are speaking about global population, we are 7 billion, and perhaps in 20 years we will be 9 billion and perhaps more. It's very different when we are speaking about teenagers. Because we know that when we are speaking about innovation, we need the young generations. Never, even if sometimes we like to have this picture, the people who innovate a lot to change the world are more than 40. Sorry for some people who are here. But when you have the vision, not only the GAFA, but many, many, many things in mathematics, in companies, and for new business and so on, it's with the people who are between 20 and 30. And we are lucky because never we had 1 billion teenagers. And never we had enough data that we have today. And the couple between data, digitization, and teenagers is certainly key to open the way of a new world. And innovation plays a very, very central role in this new vision. And certainly these people are key to manage in the same times jobs, business, and the manner to think the future and to be committed. That is key for our companies. If we would like to obtain, to attract these people in our company, we have to adapt the strategy of the company to these things. If we would like to have the best, we have to accelerate this adaptation. The second thing, in Schneider Electric, you can see a word BOP somewhere. I'm in charge of bottom of the pyramid. I spend half of my time in the middle of nowhere in India and in Africa, where people who don't have access to electricity, to find solutions to provide this access to electricity, because never we will solve the question of biodiversity, the question of climate change, if we don't solve the question of development. We are all in the common planet. Today, 1.4 or 5 billion people don't have access to electricity. This evening, they will live in the dark. And it's a key topic to be sure that we open a better way with peace, and we have this meeting in the same time that the D-Day and so on, and we have to understand something between innovation and peace. It's a chance that I have in Schneider Electric to be linked to the youth. In fact, I spend a lot of my personal time in organization linked to youth, and to access to electricity, which is a very beautiful place to innovate and to meet very interesting people who are thinking differently than myself. For our company, a company like Schneider Electric, which is focused of technological, oh my God, bricks to organize the power distribution with safety, efficiency, scalability, and so on. The fact that we push the company and all the employees of the company, not only the big bosses, but the workers too, to face these two realities, it's key to change the company.
I'd like you all now to take a little bit of a step back, and Anne-Laurence has accused me of being philosophical with this question when I ran it past her earlier. Not so long ago, companies had a very clear job: make money, pay staff, observe regulations, pay taxes. Governments had a very clear job: provide social welfare, legislate, protect citizens, collect taxes, and spend them on all those things. That seems to have broken down. So 2 questions. Are companies taking more space because governments are receding, are becoming weaker, are getting out of the way, and therefore companies need to pick up the slack? How is that shift happening, and has it always been so? You know, if you think the very cornerstone of capitalism is self-interest, as we've been told, enlightened self-interest maybe. In the 80s, 90s, it got worse. Greed is good, so companies having any social responsibility was not something that was on the table at all. So what has changed and why? What about governments and companies now?
I think the issue is that politicians don't dare to tell the truth. Because they assume that if you say, well, we are in a wartime, not against Nazism, but against ourselves and our business, our model. So we have to fight, and they don't dare to say what Churchill said. I don't remember in English,
Blood,
but I
sweat,
promise
and tears.
you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, I think people are ready to hear this, because then we know, okay, we are all in the same boat. There is something to solve, and we'll do it together. And it's like when I see my kids, when they work hard, they don't like to work hard at first, but then when they learn a lot of things, and at the end they are happy to go to their exam and they succeeded, they are very happy. And if you tell them, okay, there is no problem, you don't need to work, then they won't work by themselves. And I think we are all the same, and promising a journey where we will all together fight, and with, yes, difficult moments, but we can all win at the end, and that's what our friend from US said.
Yeah. Anne-Laurence, do you think governments don't have the courage to tell us the truth, and so companies have to do the job for them now?
It's one element, but maybe also the world is much more globalized, more complex, and there are blurring boundaries. Typically, tax optimization. Companies can optimize very heavily their tax base, and choose their locations with regards to tax optimization. So then a local government cannot do a lot. So then it comes back to the company itself to be more proactive and explain how it is reasonable. And at the end of the chain, it's the investor to put the pressure on companies, typically the GAFAs, those the Googles, Apple, and so on. They don't want to pay taxes, and we can put pressure on them alongside the European community, like pay your taxes. And so it comes back to the company, to their own choices. Yes. So this is one. And maybe second, I think this idea, this philosophical idea that there is money making at a company level on one side, and then regulation and spending the money on the at the state level on the other side. It's kind of it's a philosophical perspective. It was very different at the end of the 19th century in Europe, with paternalism, like there was not a lot of regulations. And some companies were headed by executives who thought they had to take care of their employees. So I think at the end of the day, it's kind of coming back to common sense, to values, and how we want to live our daily life as managers, as employees, and do we want to work as a permanent fight to get more money, or just to make work like, as Christian said, a joint endeavor that is not only limited to what the state can say, or it's actually everybody can have a role to play, and it's true for companies, it's true for local authorities, and we can see that there is a lot of momentum on sustainability with regards to cities. So I think everybody has a role to play, and being honest and sharing ideas, we see a lot of impetus around that.
Is there, maybe just one more political science kind of question, is there democratic deficit though? Because nobody voted the Google chairman in except his board. Nobody votes CEOs in. We don't get to decide who runs the big companies. We just have to hope that they do the right thing, maybe due to pressure, maybe due to their personal trajectory. Is there a problem if governments step back and companies who were not elected by us kind of take over part of the job?
Well, there is another way than electing. It's being clients. So if you don't agree with the
voting
companies,
with your feet and your money,
you can vote with your money, your feet,
Yes.
and become a client on that.
Yes.
Just would like to come back on your question, because for me there are three fundamental key differences between the world of yesterday and the world of today. The first one is the size of global companies. You know, the Googles and so on. They've been, you know, giants, and they have budget, you know, exceeding budget of some of the states. Not talking about their market cap, you know, over 1,000 billion of dollars for some of them. So that's the first difference. And being more global, they are the true transversal players of that size in the world, more than the states. You know, the states, they regulate their own nations. You know, a Google, an Amazon, an Apple, they can have an impact across the world, a Schneider. So that's the first difference for me. The second difference is transparency through media and social media. So compared to the world of the past, what you do actually as a company can be very visible. So if you have a statement, but then you don't respect your statement, and you do something very different in terms of your sourcing, for example, in terms of your supply chain not being done in a sustainable way, people will see that. So your interest in acting upon, you know, what you said is new. And the third thing for me is a sense of emergency, you know, at least that I feel, and I think our children feel, which is the planet is under threat, the peace is under threat. It has been in the past, but there is this sense of urgency, and because of this urgency, I have a deep conviction that it is not the states versus the companies. It's an and, not an or. We need the mobilization of the two sides.
Yes, I think so, with the word of collaboration. In fact, in my view, the 20th century was very simple and linear. The states were here to decide, and after that we have the company, and after that you have the clients. And the 21st century, it's more complex and every time we are in a circular mode. We are speaking about circular economy to understand very well the model, but it's a question of discussion between states, because regulation is key for financial, but for many, many things, regulation is key. States, companies, civil society, but not in a linear mode like in the past, but today in a big dialogue. You know, in COP21, we designed together something with the word agenda of the solution. It was the first time that during the global negotiation about climate, we asked the company about the solution for the future. We come back to innovation. And we need to put in the middle of the table, when we face the 10, 20, 30 next years, which type of solution we will have. If you remember well, 30 years ago, nobody had internet. The mobile phone today has 20 years. The smartphone has only 10 years. What's happened in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years? And with this agenda of the solution, if we are able to continue to organize the dialogue, and certainly the big question is how do we support this dialogue and we enrich the dialogue, because we need that. But never I can say, okay, in the past the power was in the States, and today the power in the company. We can see that when we are speaking about Europe, China, US, we can see the place of the state. But sure, because companies today are not only with only one bottom line, and because the people, especially the millennials, to be attracted, ask to have some value, to be more coherent between their own vision, conviction for the future, for today too, and the manner that we drive and we lead the companies. Certainly, it's more complex, but in the middle of this complexity, certainly we can find the solution to reshape the world.
Now, are there companies, in your view, where it is easier to achieve that change because of the very nature of what they do? I can imagine that finance in itself is not particularly polluting, except maybe for computer power and so on. So you can make a shift towards maybe environmentally conscious investing more easily than, say, if you run a coal company in Poland, or you make cigarettes. How do you turn those ethical? So are there companies who really should be leading this because it's easier for them, pulling the others with them?
Well, when you talk about finance, honestly, it's kind of a challenge to be focused on sustainability in the finance world, and I think we are not the more advanced players in the economy. When we do finance, we finance companies. So we could choose the companies we don't want to finance, and typically it's kind of it's a hot topic in the finance business. So we can decide not to finance coal-related businesses, tobacco-related businesses. But when you say that, it means you cut business opportunities. So these are shifts that are not easy to do for financial institutions. And most of them have some initiatives in the sustainable business, but it's kind of on the side. On the other side, you have other businesses, which are typically in the environmental business, in the health business, where it's kind of embedded in their core business model. So these sectors are much more advanced than the financial sector is actually. We hope we can do more, because I think at the finance level, we have a lot of leverage we can use to help the economy go faster towards a more sustainable world. But to be frank, I think finance business is really not the most advanced business part of the economy.
Okay. Now, something that I really want to ask all four of you, if you will, to answer to. So we've identified the why. Why would companies become more responsible? You've mentioned talent. You've mentioned to attract talent. You've mentioned reputation. You've mentioned that clients may not deal with these companies if they don't like the ethical outlook, and maybe partner companies. Now, what about the shareholders? I know if we can do A and we can do B, and both are necessary, and we can do them at the same time, that's great. Now, at some point, as the Americans say, the rubber hits the road. What happens when you have a choice to make between profit and sustainability? When you cannot combine the two, you're making an arbitrage between one or the other. Either your shareholders are going to have a lower dividend next quarter because you did the right thing, or they have the usual dividend and you have done something bad. How do companies deal with that?
So I think as asset managers, when we manage the money on behalf of investors, we can explain them if there is or not a choice to be made. As I said earlier, in the mature industries and in mature asset classes, such as equity funds or bond funds, in large companies, you can definitely combine impact and financial performance. And not only us, actually, if you do studies, if you analyze the performance of sustainability-driven funds versus non-sustainability-driven funds, the performance for sustainability-driven funds is slightly better over 1, 5, 10 years. So it's kind of interesting. Why so? Because we capture a bit more of business opportunities. Yes. We are a bit more forward-looking and not quarterly driven, financial results at quarterly level driven. And we are also more conscious on risk. So we invest in growth and quality companies. So that's one. That being said, it works for mature businesses. For less mature businesses, or for businesses where the impact is truly either very difficult to achieve, or in a nation business, you cannot combine impact and financial performance. And so then you have several options. You can tell it to investors, okay, you're going to have less return but a great impact. So we get investors to that. And you can also structure your financial investment in a way that is very clean, like you have one risky way that can be for public investors or donors, and it will de-risk the traditional investment so that the tranche that invests with the less risk can have kind of traditional financial returns.
So the authorities, the government can act like an
insurance
company, insurance for these things until they become sustainable and it is also profitable.
It's kind of a first loss.
A first loss. Gwenhaël, in your experience, do you find that boards sometimes tremble at a backlash from shareholders if they do the right thing and it costs them a lot of money?
I think your question about the rubber in the road, that's really the key one. First of all, long-term versus short-term choices, that's core in the CEO choices all the time. Should I cut my investment for the future in terms of building new facilities, investing in new clients, whatever, or should I maximize my profit for the next quarter? This has been an agenda for so many years since we had quarterly reportings, more or less. So that topic is not very different in nature than the previous ones. First, so it is really a question about investing for the future versus short-term yields. My view is that in the long term there is a convergence between, let's say, the shareholders' interest and the stakeholders' interest. And exactly because the stakeholders are the clients of tomorrow, at least, So if you don't make the call for an environmental or societal impact in your company, maybe it won't have any consequence for the next quarter and the quarter after that. But in 5 years, 10 years from now, at least I have the conviction that it will have.
And do you feel a shift in shareholders' appreciation? Because as John Maynard Keynes said, in the long run, we're all dead.
Yes. Well, I feel this is coming, and maybe you can probably more comment from the investment side, but from the CEOs and the executive committee side, the preoccupation is there because they feel this sentiment of their client and their staff, once again, is changing, and that if they don't move now, this will have impact in 5 years, 10 years from now. So it's exactly like any other investment, from a pure, mass perspective and, return perspective, it's the interest of the company to think like that.
Thank you. And we have time, I believe, for a couple of questions from the audience, if there are any, to anyone or all of our panelists.
Just one thing, something is very I share what you said. Something is very interesting is if we have a look of specific investor who are the insurance, the big company, AXA, Allianz, Generali, and so on, which represent a large part of the share of the big worldwide companies. Today, these companies are very sensitive about what's happened about the climate, what's happened about the biodiversity, because they face the topic in many, many different manners. And these companies are key in the relationship that we have with our investors. And certainly, they will accelerate the transition, because your question is the question of the transition. each of us, we agree what you express about the middle term. It's the same thing about energy transition. We would like to be in this position. What is difficult is to go from where we are to the position where we would like to be.
Which you think is inevitable. It's just a question of managing the transition.
Yes, it's a question of managing the transition. And the fact that these specific actors, the big investors, are moving from, okay, it was very interesting, but it's not possible to have the good data about this topic and to understand very well what's happening in the company, to something new. For example, 2 weeks ago in G7 in Metz, WWF and AXA published together some goals, data, manner to measure the link between companies and biodiversity. It's very interesting to understand that something new in a wake signal is here to change drastically in the 5-10 years.
Okay. Do we have a question? Or maybe two if they're short. Yes, please. No, you've got a mic coming.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this very interesting session. Marlo Hood with Agence France Presse. You referred to this transition towards sustainability, let's say, and you talk about the sensitivity of companies to their clients, to consumers, to their own staff. If we think of climate change, for example, there's a time limit there. That's a problem. In other words, this transition cannot happen at its own pace. So what's missing for you for that process to be accelerated somewhere in relationship to those deadlines that we have?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's one for Gwenhaël somehow.
Tough question, but great question. Honestly, I don't know the answer. I don't know what's missing. I even don't know if what we do today is enough or not. I have the intuition that it's probably not enough. When you look at what the scientists said about the model of prediction of temperatures and so on, it's pretty far from being enough. How could we make that a bigger deal? Probably by each of us expressing by the various means that we have as citizens and consumers what we think about that. And if a vast majority of us believe that we're not going fast enough, well, we can say that through the way we vote, the way we consume. My point of view is that to date, we're still consuming and voting in the same way we have been. So which is probably why the tipping point has not, you see some of the recent election in Europe, for example, where you see some of the trend without doing any politics, that this has become sort of a mainstream topic, the climate change that you're evoking. But not to a stage where it has become the first topic on the list. And same for consumer, you and me, we still consume, at supermarkets and things like that, which are far from being sustainable from their products, their supply chain, and so on. So it's for us, each of us.
Just
very quickly.
Yes, we are speaking about disruption. What is new this year? If we compare now and 1 year ago, something is very new. It's the mobilization of the youth. From Greta in COP24 Davos with Schwarzenegger last week, the big action with Youth for Climate, what's happening in France with La Bascule and some other things. It's a symbol about how the society are moving about this topic. It's a question about people who say we have to change our behaviors, we have to change our manner to travel, to eat, to play. And it's very new. And certainly, we have to measure in the coming months, not coming years or decades, coming months, the consequence of the beginning of this new mobilization. And sure, for the companies, we are speaking about the people that we would like to recruit in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And it was your first speech about how do we attract people. With this new big trend, very different in the last 6 months than in the past, certainly we can accelerate.
Excellent. This is it from us. Thank you very much to my 4 panelists. You were brilliant. This was great insights. And stick around, there's more panels coming.